The revolution is real, it's live, and as some comrades say, it's lit, right? Lit. The revolution is lit.
Ahura, comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Sunday Study featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is Yeshitela, Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party, as well as your MC for this morning, and I just want to be self-critical for the late start today. We were experiencing some technical difficulties, but we got them all worked out, so we appreciate you guys for staying tuned, sticking with us, and enjoying our new opening theme song. Today's study of the party, where we've taken you all through the last 5 decades of the struggle for Black power and self-determination. We discussed the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s by the U.S. government and the emergence of the African People's Socialist Party in 1972, along with the solving of the remaining problems of the revolution. We talked about the unprecedented strategy of white solidarity with Black power with the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976, and the many earth-shattering campaigns that the party took on and led surrounding colonial violence, such as the campaign to free Desi Woods. We saw Chairman Omali Yeshitela introduce the concept of dual and containing power to the earth, and a part of the practical implementation of this concept is our 30 economic institutions of our party to date. Our final study of this series will focus on the years 2010 and beyond, with our panel consisting of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, leader and founder of the Uhuru Movement, Asa Ampu, Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party, Occupied Azania of South Africa, Dr. Aisha Fields, Director of the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project in Huntsville, Alabama, Columbai Antoinette, International President of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement in St. Louis, Missouri, and Jesse Neville, National Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Another chapter in our struggle, one still being written today. During the discussion, we ask that you engage and ask questions directed at any of our participants. Continuing the struggle till it's won, comrades, brothers, and sisters, I now want to take us to the leader of the African nation, the one who has saw us through all these decades, keeping the revolution at the center for all of them, Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Ahura, comrades, I really want to appreciate everybody coming to this study. I think it's been an extraordinary series of discussions we've had revolving around the history of the African People's Socialist Party. That is one of the most fundamental historical occurrences in the struggle for the freedom of our people. And in fact, the African People's Socialist Party being the organization, the sole organization, the primary organization, I should say, that has continued the struggle of our people for national liberation, for the total liberation, unification of Africa and African people, for the ascension of the African working class to its proper role as ruling class in a free, liberated world where there are no longer workers and bosses and slave masters and colonialists and colonizers and the colonizers. So our party has, over the years, and we've talked about some of this, since its inception, it solved the fundamental problem of continuing the revolution. The United States government had initiated an incredible counterinsurgency that was connected to its partners all around the world to make sure that Africans and oppressed peoples would not win freedom, and to try and erase the whole concept and question of revolution from the consciousness of African and other oppressed peoples around the world. We saw assassinations, mass arrests of people sweeping the planet Earth, the most brutal kind of repression of entire African colonized communities. And the African People's Socialist Party is still here. And we have continued to fight the anti-colonial struggle, notwithstanding all the attacks, not only on the physical existence of the African revolution, but also on the ideological front, the theoretical front. We've deepened it beyond anything that has been existing up to now. The theory, the death of assassination of people like Malcolm X and people like Kwame Nkrumah and people like Patrice Lumumba were not simply necessary for the elimination, the physical elimination of these courageous people, but it was also an assault on the ideology, the philosophy of self-determination, of African people being free, so that they could substitute this whole concept of racism and fighting against white people and fighting against racism for what we need to do, which was to liberate our people from colonial domination, from colonial capitalism. And our party has been the organization that has continued that struggle, and we are determined to overturn imperialism, to overturn capitalism, while we do not denounce or fight against movements just around single issues and things like that, but we recognize that what has to happen is that white power, capitalist power, colonial capitalism, they have to be overturned if African people are to be free, and if the peoples of the world are to be free. This is what connects the struggle of African people in the United States with the struggle of African people worldwide, and this is what connects the worldwide struggle of African people with the struggle of oppressed peoples everywhere. All of us are engaged in a struggle against colonialism. Some of us are aware of it and some are not. Some find ourselves trapped with religious definitions of what the struggle is all about. Some find ourselves trapped with racial definitions of what the struggle is all about, but it is against colonial capitalism that came into existence as a consequence of the attack, the assault on Africa, turning Africa into what Karl Marx called a warren for the hunting of, commercial hunting of blackskins, the dispersal of African people around the world to build capitalism. This is what we are having to deal with and overturn, and that's what the African People's Socialist Party has led in. And I wanted to say that we have been and will continue to talk about the role of the Solidarity Movement, the African People's Solidarity Committee in particular, the role of white people in this whole struggle, because the white people have been offered up as a mysterious element, because the Africans have suffered so much from white people, and so have other peoples around the world, that there has been an element of mystery around white people. Who are these creatures who could do all this stuff to us? And depending on the worldview of those of us who have been trying to define this reality, we have come up with good or bad definitions of this relationship and of white people as such. First of all, despite the fact that white people appear to have acted abnormally cruel and rapacious in their relationship to the rest of the world, we should not be mystified by that. That doesn't mean that white people are genetic mutants, or that white people some biblical force that has been imposed on us, whether as devils or something to that effect. I mean, the Vietnamese, who had this temporary incredible victory over white power, they weren't fighting devils and they weren't fighting genetic mutations, but they understood that there is a science of society the way that helps us to understand the motivation of all human beings in society, the thing that distinguishes human beings from other animals, and that is the ongoing struggle to produce and reproduce real life, a kind of necessity that we're all involved in. And depending on the circumstances and history, and depending on the level of development that we have achieved at any given time in the history of humanity, this struggle looks different. And what you have is a situation where Europeans came into history primarily thrust themselves into history through an attack on Africa and other peoples around the world. This became the means by which white people, as we now know them, began to achieve a capacity to produce and reproduce real life through the vampirish, if you will, through the parasitic assault on the rest of us. There's nothing mysterious about that. The fact is that your refrigerator is empty because your food is in some white kitchen, whether someplace in the world. There's nothing mysterious about that. The fact is that we don't have clean water in places like Sierra Leone because the resources that have come from Sierra Leone have created plumbing and clean water in places in London and other places around the world. There's no mystery, and we have to understand that. And the thing that maintains this relationship is brute force, the terrorism. Either from the colonial armies directly, the imperialist armies directly, the US and the French and the British who overturn governments that try to speak to our interests, or by their indirect capacity that function as neo-colonial tools against our people. There's no mystery about that. But if we just simply think of it as the evil white people, then we can't come to solutions. And I just think it's really important to say that. And the party has contributed to the science. I don't care whether you like white people or not. That's not even the question. I mean, to say you don't like white people is not really something that's profound. I mean, white people don't like white people. The thing is, how do we get to freedom? How do we get to liberation? What's the science of revolution? That's the thing that we are dealing with every day. And because there's so much mystery and confusion associated with this whole question that we characterize as race and racism, then it is so easy to misdirect and mislead people who don't have the benefit of African internationalism or scientific appreciation of what this relationship is about. So I want to just say this, that the history of our party is profound. We have solved all kinds of problems, both organizational, political, and theoretical, that were left on the battlefield of the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s that stalled the political and ideological development of so many forces. But our party was never politically and never militarily defeated, and we've always been in the trenches subsequent to the defeat of the African Revolution. And there's really no mystery to some of what it was that made it possible. First of all, we had an incredible kind of flexibility because we do adopt the whole method of investigation and analysis that's called historical materialism or dialectical historical materialism. And that meant that even as we were coming under assault as an African revolution, we understood that it was important for us to open up another front. While we were under assault, we made it necessary for imperialist white power to be able to fight in its own backyard. We attacked them behind enemy lines. We created the African People's Solidarity Committee that would allow us to extract resources and what have you straight from those who are stealing it from us, and then to apply those resources to the African Revolution. We succeeded in winning scores and hundreds of, and perhaps thousands of white people to an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist politic and action. More than that, in action, because there are so many people who love us, but they don't want to do anything. They don't want to act on it. And even those people who say they act on it somehow do so reluctantly because they cannot justify their existence without saying they have a connection with black people. But we want you to have a relationship not with just black people, but with an anti-colonial revolutionary movement that would change the world. That's what we are about as the African People's Socialist Party. So I want to say that. And also what I want to say is that when our movement came under assault, when people were being assassinated all around us and jailed all around us, and when even some of our own leaders, Lawrence Mann was being killed, and when I was being jailed so frequently that even I had to read the newspaper to see where I was at any given moment to see if I was in jail. One of the things that was so significant was, again, the creation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, because we had to keep this revolution moving. And we had to put forces in place to carry out the intent of the revolution, to carry out a revolutionary strategy, so that even if we've been wounded and people are in jail and what have you, how do we move the anti-colonial, the struggle against colonial capitalism forward? How do we build the kinds of institutions, infrastructure necessary to take this revolution into the next century? These were questions that the African People's Socialist Party solved, and we were able to do that only because we got rid of this whole notion of racism and the white man, and understood that we were fighting against the system, because you can kill this white man, that white man. We've seen that over and over again. White men and women have been killed, and it has not resulted in overturning the social system that we're talking about. In fact, there is a system that holds up white people, that holds up the whole relationship between white people and Africans around the world, that African People's Socialist Party has assaulted, and we've done it efficiently, and we've done it consistently, and we've developed a kind of skills and experience and maturity in the process of doing that that allows us to still be here. And the African Revolution is still being advanced as opposed to the interests or of some individual or a group of individuals. So this is who the African People's Socialist Party is. And beyond that, I just want to, because this is something that we talked about, but not to the extent that I just want to say a few things about it, and I know I'm eating up some of the time that we need to talk to some of the comrades involved in this discussion. But I want to send a special appreciation to the African People's Solidarity Committee, to the forces like Comrade Penny Hess, with whom I have worked since 1976, when the African People's Solidarity Committee was first formed and founded, who has been a part of this movement. Now, let me tell you what makes this significant, because we have a situation where African people are colonized. And that means Africans are always in pain, some kind of pain, police violence, attack on the integrity of our consciousness, on our culture. There's always pain being inflicted. That's what colonialism means. There's always that kind of pain. And so from time to time, because of the pain, African people will join the movement. But if that pain, if that remains the sole basis for their being involved in the movement, what happens is, if that pain subsides and if they don't feel like they can get rid of that pain within a reasonable amount, what they would consider a reasonable amount of time, they often leave the revolutionary movement. But the solidarity forces, I'm not talking about all the solidarity forces, because some of the solidarity forces come into this movement for the most ridiculous and sometimes self-serving, selfish kind of reasons. Sometimes they feel with charity, just like the other white people, quote unquote, who love us. They feel with charity, and they sometimes feel themselves having a certain kind of self-significance because they are aiding the noble savages. That's us, right? That happens. But the reality is that when we've won genuine solidarity, these are forces who have not been motivated by pain, but by commitment, by theory, by actually uniting with the ideology, and many of them have become extraordinary African internationalists. And so that's why I can say Penny Hess has been here since 1976, when some people couldn't hang for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because either their pain subsided, or they didn't feel like they could resolve their own painful personal problems, or because they didn't feel like we paid enough attention to their own personal pain. They've gone, and sometimes they even end up attacking the revolution. But I think I want to say solidarity. I want to appreciate the existence of the solidarity movement. And Comrade Penny Hess is a white woman, by the way. She is a colonizer. She is from the colonizer nation. And what we've done is initiate a process where we attack colonialism. And so that a white person who's an anti-colonialist white person can be a part of the revolutionary trajectory that we're involved in. That's what we've done. And Penny Hess has been doing it since 1976, when it was extraordinarily unpopular to do this. When the so-called white left was attacking this whole relationship, because, and that's one thing that's always happened, this relationship comes under assault. Initially, it comes under assault by the so-called white left, the Spartacus League, and who are extraordinary ultra-leftists who would say that it can't work because white people would never work against their own interests, because from their perspective, these are flaming, frothing at the mouth communists, they say, Marxists, they say, but from their perspective, it's against the interests of white people, the white working class, white people, to work under the leadership of colonized African people that are working against their own interests. And that is a sentiment that's held by a lot of white people who love us, quote unquote. As long as they can support us in theory, they can support us and have rallies and demonstrations and et cetera, to support this person, that person. They even had a Negro climb a flagpole in San Francisco some years ago to remove the Confederate flag and to replace it with the American flag. That was what they did. So we had that. We had slander coming from the white movement who said that this relationship was just white lesbians working under the leadership of black men. This relationship has always been under assault, because there's understood by some what a strategical significance this relationship is in terms of defeating white power, destroying colonialism, destroying capitalism, and seeing the African working class rise up to its proper place as the ruling class. That's what this war is all about. So Penny Hess has been here. When it was extraordinarily unpopular to do this, I mean, we just were there. We were the laughing stocks. We were the freaks because we had the audacity to talk about white people working under the leadership of African people, the African working class. We were the freaks, but we did it. And Penny Hess, you know, was one of the early persons who did it. And I'm going to get in trouble now because I'm not going to name some people. I want to name some people specifically. And I'm not going to mention your name, because there are so many of you, and you're going to be peed off with me, but I think you'll understand exactly what it is that I'm trying to do with this discussion. So I talk about Penny Hess, and who's been here since '76, and who has led the struggle in the white world, in the solidarity movement, to challenge that whole politic of charity, where you just helping the poor Negroes, poor Negroes who don't have Medicare or don't have access to mental health or something to that effect, right? She's moved beyond that, and she made the struggle inside APSC to say that what we have to do is move beyond charity politics, and we have to go ahead and engage in the world, because all the money in the world, or most of it, is in the white community where we live. And our task for the African Revolution has to go into the white community where our parents live, our sisters and brothers live, and where we know the banks and all of the resources are located. And we have a responsibility to set up institutions, to institutionalize this capacity, to transfer these resources from the white community, from the colonizer to the colonized. Penny did that. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. And then I want to say that there are other people, some of whom have worked like slaves, and I mean this almost literally, in our institutions. Some of whom don't get paid, never got paid. Some of them do get paid, but you know, we've got people like Maureen Wagner who's worked in our institutions, but she has donated scores of thousands of dollars to this struggle, to this movement. She doesn't own it, she used to own it. She used to own it, but she knew it was ours. So she put it in this institutionalized capacity of the African Revolution to do what's necessary to destroy the system that would have more money in the white world than in the African world, though African people produce all the wealth that they enjoy. Maureen did that. She does it on a regular basis. She does that. And, but there are some people who didn't donate that kind of money. They're like Pete Yoroshock, and they're like Devin, who for a while came here along with Ron Stagg, who have some varying degree of solidarity or relationship with us. But when Comrade Gaida Cambone came to St. Petersburg, Florida in 1994 or so, to take this building that had been abandoned, had been vacant for more than 18, 20 years, sitting there as an eyesore in our community. When we sent Comrade Gaida Cambone into St. Petersburg, Florida, to turn this building into a place where this Uhuru House could be located, where I'm sitting now having this discussion with you, Pete came here, and Ron came here, and Devin came here, and they worked for years, working inside this building, transforming it, because that was their job. They had the skills, they had the time, because they could be here, because Africans who were working had to be working for a living, and they didn't have the time often to do what Pete, Ron, and Devin did. That was work they did. That was genuine solidarity. That was before all of this that you see that the party appears to have possession of today. So I want to express appreciation. And Comrade Allison Haney, who was the Secretary General of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who traveled with me to London, where there was work that I had to do in terms of speaking to the Libyans to try and win a certain kind of solidarity so that we can initiate the founding meeting of the African Socialist International in Libya at that time, because Colonel Gaddafi seemed to have upheld the whole notion of United Africa and what have you. And Comrade Allison, who has been here for years and years and years, and who has donated thousands of dollars, and there's never a time where she's not at work in that institution. And she has donated scores of thousands of dollars because she knew it belongs to the revolution. She knew it came from African people, so she made that contribution. She wasn't whining or something about what you're going to do with the money. She says, I know that it belongs to the revolution. This is the only thing I see that represents the black revolution where I can put it, and this is an assault on the relationship that black people have with white people that will allow me to have this money as opposed to the African Revolution having this money. So Allison did that, you know, and she's been here now for almost as long as Penny has been here. She's been a part of this for 35, 40 years, just about. And so I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for that. And Paul Kessler, you know, who for years and years down in Santa Cruz, California, he's the guy, he sold more pies than almost anybody, and he is the one who built the display counter at the Uhuru Bakery Cafe that we had in Oakland, California, that the government destroyed when from that cafe we organized resistance against the U.S. attack on Panama and had demonstrations. And then the day that we did that, the day after they burned that building in Oakland, California, well, Paul built the display case where we had all our goods, and he's been with us, and his mama was a supporter of us, you know, for years and years and years. This is genuine, unwavering, non-flaky solidarity. And Susan Worth, who died after she was slandered, and the party was slandered, the movement was slandered, and we would call her a cult, and her mama had her kidnapped by a black man who was supposed to be a deprogrammer, who held her captive and beat her and treated her so badly that eventually she committed suicide. This is what we are talking about, the solidarity movement has been able to produce. And Raya Fogarty, who's in St. Louis now, suffering all kinds of physical ailments, but who, as a younger woman, when we were organizing for the first tribunal, the reparations against African people, who we met in New York City when she was just a punker, but she also understood that what she had to do was join the Black Revolution, who missed the first meeting she was supposed to attend with me because she had gone to jail because on the way to the meeting she saw white cops beating beating a Puerto Rican in the streets, and she jumped on the cops. That's the kind of movement, that's the solidarity that we're talking about. This ain't no Sunday go to meeting kind of solidarity. This ain't no wavering, punkish kind of solidarity. We're talking about a relationship that's based on a firm commitment to overturn colonial capitalism and recognizing that central to the defeat of imperialism is the African Revolution. And Raya was there and is there even today, and Kitty Riley, who was one of those people who came to the movement when the party was doing what? When the party was fighting against white feminists who were talking about how the struggle, the oppression of black women had something to do with feminism and Me Too of the day. She is the one who came into this work out of Eugene, Oregon, where I met her. And she said that she understood that to fight for Desi Woods, who had an African woman from Georgia, who had killed a white man with his own gun when he attempted to rape her and her friend. And we said, free Desi Woods and smash colonial violence. She did that because that's what the African Revolution called for. And even despite all of the attacks that were coming against the party and coming against the solidarity movement, and will always come against the party because we are the Advanced Detachment, the Vanguard, and what being the Vanguard means is being out front. And being out front means that they have to come through us to get to the rest of the black people. And an attack on the party is an attack on African people. They just can't get to the people without first coming through the party. That's what the Vanguard means. That's who we are, and etc. So, you know, I have to mention Zoe and Wendy Snyder and Jamie and Sarah and Jennifer as just some examples. And then I want to mention Jesse Neville, who is sitting right here next to me. Youngster, you know, who came into the movement. I think he might have been 22 or something like that. And you know, so he's about 3 days older now. And who came into Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And in short order, has won nearly 1,000 white people, has won nearly 1,000 white people of a colonizer nation to solidarity with the movement to overturn this colonial relationship that we have. And this is part of what has fueled our ability. When everything else died in the African Revolution, the African People's Socialist Party kept moving. Not because there were some white people over here that funded us or had something to do with the money, because the African People's Socialist Party extended the revolution. They extended the black revolution into the white world, and that's what they represent. And people who are white, who are opposed to this, they are opposed to it because they cannot tolerate the idea that black people are going to take power for real, as opposed to some individual who may be suffering mental health. I talk about mental health. I'm not just messing with that, because I was in California. I remember there was this guy in California who had all these African, who had all these white people following him. They called themselves breatharians. And they called themselves breatharians because he had convinced them that once you reach this high level of development, of moral and intellectual development, human development, you didn't have to eat food anymore. That you can just live off air. So they call themselves breatharians. These had white people who were following this guy, breatharians. So you had to learn how to breathe, right? And until they caught him at a McDonald's, and then of course that blew everything for him, right? But this is the kind. When I'm talking about mental health, that's what I'm talking about. This kind of stuff that you got white people following this kind of stuff. I'm saying follow the revolution, and that's what the solidarity movement has been able to do. And Redbeard. And there are others. All of them don't have the same level of solidarity and commitment. All of them are not willing to give the same kind of definitive unity under the leadership of the Black Revolution, but they are there. Mark Anderson and people like that, they've given thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that would, according to the Spartacus League, would be against their own interests, because it is money that's given to overturn the relationship that they have with capitalism and colonialism, destroy capitalism. Well, the question is whether you really want to destroy capitalism or do something else. If you want to destroy colonialist capitalism, then you join the Solidarity Movement, you support the Solidarity Movement in general, and the African People's Solidarity Committee specifically. And so, you know, Lisa Watson over there in the cold, and, you know, I don't know how you suffer that. Stephanie Midler, who we brought from Oregon to St. Petersburg, Florida, and where we had her running a store. And then we sent her, after that, over to Oakland, California, take over this store. Joel Hamburger, who for years was a part of this movement. Like I said, people have different levels of unity with this, but all of them have been able to support the struggle against colonialism. So it ain't been that white people, black people thing like that. It has been recognition that we have to overturn this system, this systemic relationship, this relationship that is defined by structures, by the ability of imperialism to continue to extract value from the whole African world. And the only reason they can do that is because African people do not have the power to stop it, and they have agreed to become a part of that African power. They have united with becoming a part of that African power, as opposed to going off and doing their own thing based on their own subjective feeling and their own relationships to the world. So I wanted to say those kinds of things. I really think it's important because we talked about it, and I just want to say something about Sandra Thompson. Because I remember a time that Sandra came into this movement. She was somebody who worked at one of these so-called public radio stations, you know. And I say so-called because they're about as public as the ruling class representatives who give money in their own name to it to keep it afloat and to keep anything off that does not challenge that. But Sandra came as a reporter when the African People's Socialist Party in Oakland, California, at a time where there were 10,000 officially determined black homeless people, at a time where more than 50% of the residential rental property in East Oakland alone, and more than 80% of the commercial rental property in East Oakland were owned by white people. And African people were being pushed into the streets and living in the bushes and parks so that they could initiate the process of gentrification, where the party took one of the houses that was owned by the city government and put a homeless African woman and her children into that house with the cooperation of people who lived all over the Bay Area who came. Carpenters came and plumbers came and roofers came and people who agreed that the people could do something and we said that we said empty houses and homeless black people go together. And there were people who were united with that, Mexicans and North Americans or white people and Africans, and we came and took that house. And then Sandra came there as a reporter for that news, that radio station. And she was there the night where we were spending the night and the police attacked it. And Sandra went to jail. And I said, oh, that's the last we'll see of her. But what that did, it didn't push Sandra out of the movement. It deepened her commitment to the movement, and she's been here ever since. She's been here ever since. And let me say this, because people would not necessarily have known it, but Sandra was here when she was facing debilitating, life-threatening disease where I literally thought, and she thought, she was going to die. You understand? And she showed up here every day. She showed up wherever she had to be to the best that she could carry out the mission. She carried out the mission. This is what has happened with the Solidarity Movement. I say the Solidarity Movement, this is an organization of the African People's Socialist Party. This is what makes up the fiber of the African People's Socialist Party. Those forces who were able to do that, that's what we want. Yep. That's what we want. And I just wanted to say that. Ooh. So, I want to move forward. Is Asa on yet? I just want to know if he's here or not. Let me just go forward and I'm here. Uhuru, Asa is here, but there's a lot of interference there. So Asa is Asanda, who is located, Ampu, who is located in South Africa. And he is the Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party of South Africa, or Occupy Tanzania, as we say, and who works under the leadership of Comrade Tafari Mugeri, who is the party chair of South Africa. And Asa, I just wanted to open this up, and I'm going to come back to Asa. I don't know if we can do anything about that interference, but I'll come back to Asa. Whoa. I hope we are able to have Asa come on. He's a young African who's done incredible kind of work, and I think Asa is in Folksville, or is he in?
Yes, sir. It's in Everton West, Chairman.
You're in Everton West.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you spend a few minutes talking to us about the party and work and your involvement and introduction to the party, your involvement in the party, what you do, what y'all involved in there, Uhuru. And we're going to have you, and we're going to have Comrade Jesse and Aisha and Kalambai as a part of this discussion as well. And I ate up a lot of the time with this introduction. I usually do that, and for that I'm self-critical, but I guess. But go ahead, Asa.
Uhuru, comrades. I'd firstly like to appreciate you, Chairman, for the study and for the chance to participate in this. It's actually the first time calling in, so I'd just like to get straight to the point. I discovered the Uhuru movement in 2012 while I was at Vet University, which was the same year that I met Brother Chairman Tafari at the time. And I discovered it actually through someone else who was a fellow rapper, and we studied, the Wolves speech, and he told me about you, but I thought it was a movie clip. I thought Chairman Omali is actually an actor, but when I heard the name, I was like, okay, an actor from Nigeria with an American accent. But then, fast forward, I kept on catching up on Uhuru News because I had watched an interview, with you, and I saw the website and things like that. So I followed that out, but I wasn't really sure in itself whether to join this movement or not, because I'm from a history of philosophical idealism. I'm from, all kinds of religious obscurantism and all kinds of things. So I never really wanted to get involved in anything that was, too political. And I thought the politic of the Uhuru movement was very harsh, because it was saying that the law itself is actually, the opinion of the ruling class, and the ruling class is criminals, and it's wrong. Therefore, the whole law basically was, entire imperialist edifice was to be destroyed. And I thought that was too extreme. I preferred Minister Farrakhan and, people like that, people who could talk a good game and get people spiritual and singing. That's what I just liked. But then by 2013, I actually, I reached out to comrades with, through one of the posts of the party online, and he, communicated back to me, and he found me, and I was with him ever since. Chairman Comrade F.G. Rezi was actually, the person who was instrumental in actually showing me what the party is actually about. I was scared in 2012 because I just had all these videos and I couldn't make a decision. But by 2013, I was actually able to say, you know what, you have to take a stand. You have to make a committed stance and actually stand for something, not just a consumer of information. So, I had my friend here who actually at the time thought I was Caucasian, Tafari, because I was always at the back of the class with the white kids, and I had, the accent to blend in with those people. So, what happened to him, I tried to talk to him about this movement. I used to actually get a lot of at school, at university. And, we had serious struggles between himself and I, and our friendship was at stake here because, it's just very difficult to accept change when you're so used to the lies. For myself, as well as for him, and everybody else who's been in occupied Tanzania, we've been talking to, it's always like a fight, it's always a struggle. With self, just don't believe that it's lie. And years later, Tafari was there, I think around 50. So, I don't know if I'm answering it properly, but Chairman, that's pretty much the trajectory. I just wanted to reach where Tafari actually came into the
Comrade. Yeah, I'm sorry there was a lot of interference, but I'm hoping that everyone had an opportunity to understand. I'm seeing that the comrade working from this end during the streaming, he's got on the headphones, so he's saying that it was clear enough that people were able to hear you. And moving forward, I do hope we have an opportunity to just say something about the actual work that we've done. I want to go to some other people now, but there's actual work that's being done, and the conditions that we have to deal with in Folkville and Everton West, and then Alexandria, and our presence in Tata and in the Cape, both East and Western Cape. I think that it would be hopefully we'll have an opportunity to say some things about that and how you hit the ground running in South Africa, trying to grapple with all of the issues that's confronting our people there, and trying to bring African internationalism theoretically, politically, and organizationally there. To end the isolation of the African working class in occupied Tanzania or South Africa by uniting the interests and work with African people who are involved in this revolutionary movement worldwide. So I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to come back to say some more about that. In the meantime, what I would like to do, especially you gave me the basis, in many instances, some ways to do that when you talked about how your influence, how you were trapped into a certain kind of religious obscurantism, and and how that influenced your worldview for a long time and made it, to some extent, difficult for you to be able to embrace African internationalism and the party. But you're not the only one who had to climb over that hurdle. And I just wanted to see if we could bring Comrade Kalambai on the net, because I know that was an issue for her. for a while. And are you there, Comrade Columbi?
Uhuru, comrades, Uhuru, Chairman. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Uhuru. Yes, I just really, first and foremost, just really want to appreciate this discussion, and I consider it an honor to be on Omali taught me morning study. So I just really want to appreciate the opportunity to be here, and just really appreciate you, Chairman, for coming into Ferguson, St. Louis. Can I go back to when I met the party?
Surely you can.
Yes. Uhuru. So, yeah, as I was just sitting here listening and following the study and seeing the party and how it has developed, I just remember, August 9th when Mike Brown was murdered in St. Louis, and how I knew that I was searching for something, but I didn't know what. I just knew that, an African had died, and I had a whole bunch of pain from being a colonized African in St. Louis, and looking at the conditions of the people around me, my family. At that time, that's what I knew. And I met Chairman on the ground, like not on some platform where you can't get to him or anything. And I met him like with the people, and walking with the people, just doing groundwork. And it was you, Chairman, that started putting out African and nationalists the first time it ever hit my ears, to be able to understand the conditions of myself at that time. And I remember like feeling like I was about to explode. And I guess you've seen it, because you turned to me and you said, get the little sister's story. I'm saying, do you have something to say? Because you knew that all African people are faced with these conditions that we are faced with. And I don't know if I had anything meaningful to say at that time, but I sort of just having a flashback of my whole life. And the party just met me at that political door and really helped me to understand, like, what revolution was. Like, what do it mean to be a revolutionary? What do it mean to be an organizer, and what we have to do to change the conditions. And it went way beyond Ferguson at that point for me. It drove me to my birthright, Africa. It connected me to a nation of struggle, and it gave me the history of the party. Immediately, I tapped into all that, meeting the party. And in Ferguson, St. Louis at that time, it was like, every person of sellout or whatever had came into St. Louis, Ferguson, and I was greatly grieved, even from the church, from where I came from, the church. I was tired of praying. I was trying to fast, and I really wanted to see, like, exactly how the conditions of African people going to, in a material way, change. And I seen that, and actually got to participate in that with the party, with struggle. My own growing struggle, becoming a revolutionary, because we're not born, we're made. And the party definitely made me into a revolutionary African and nationalist. From all the different struggles that I have been able to participate and actually see with my own two eyes. Of the struggle that African people face every day.
Uhuru. Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And again, it takes us to the real issue that what we're involved in is a struggle for national liberation. It's a struggle to destroy colonialism and colonial capitalism. And that's the beginning of our discussion. That's the beginning. That's what brought us into this relationship, a discussion about how to liberate African people, the struggle and the science of African internationalism as a tool, a weapon to fight against colonial capitalism. And that's the basis of this relationship. There's nothing else. I mean, that's the basis of the relationship. And then we came to know and love each other based on that. Not on some other foolishness and not on some other assumption, not based on the fact. I mean, you told me at some point about how your two brothers had been murdered and you didn't understand how to deal with that, and how you had a brother who was locked up in prison and you didn't know how to deal with that. But what we did was we dealt with that by dealing with the colonial question. That's what we said.
Yeah.
It revolves around colonialism, and that's the thing that has shaped and defined our relationship since that time. And so I just think that's really important, what you had to say. And
yes.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Yeah, I was about the first set of things, but I really appreciate it. And the last thing I want to say is I really appreciate that you saying that, because I remember I didn't quite always understand. You used to say that Africans come into the work from our pain, and I was driven by my pain. But somewhere, through political education, I am stayed in this work, and I struggle to continue to deepen my understanding through theory. It's not just my pain, because every day is a different, I'm colonized. Every day is a different situation. And sometimes it can knock you off your feet. But what always gives me, hope to the future, what drives me to see my kids' future is African nationalism, the theory of African nationalism, and connecting myself beyond my pain, but, the theory. And, I unite with the party on practical implications and things that I have actually laid my hands on and touched and actually build, to be able to help me to see that the class, the African working class, will and must lead this struggle, and can and have the ability through everything that I got to participate and be a part of this party. And that's it's not just because I just it's a this like fest. It's because of the science and that's what drives me to continue to fight and really want to be one of the best daughters of Africa. Is because all roads lead to Uhuru.
Uhuru, I'm glad that just continuing this whole discussion about struggling through your pain, because if you're colonized, you're always in pain. Always in pain. There's not a time. And this pain intervenes in our families. It disrupts our relationship with our families. It often has us despising each other in our families, because colonialism defines who we are. It not only tells the white world who we are, but it tells us who we are. And to the extent that we haven't escaped from the ideological grasp of colonialism, we accept that definition, and we do horrible things to each other, even in our personal relationships and stuff. That's the part of the pain of colonialism. And we take that pain to us, having to do with on the school campuses, what happens to us on the school campuses, it affects us. Our joblessness is painful all the time. You got how you're going to work, whether you can work. The police messing with us all the time. A slander of the whole people. Then slander is a horrible weapon that's used against us all the time, against our people as a whole. Not just Omali Yeshitela, not just the African People's Socialist Party, but slander is a horrible weapon that's used against African people. We're all suffering from that kind of pain. And if you're not careful, that pain will take you off the point, because you're going to be jobless. If you are a colonized person, your question of having a job since slavery, it's been hard to get a job if you're colonized. And you're going to have problems with the police, and you're going to have problems with slander, and you're going to have, like a problem in our families, all of this stuff. But if we can trace it to colonialism, then we're struggling against colonialism. That's the fundamental contradiction right there, so that we're not trapped by pain. And that's why having a real understanding, that's why having African internationalism that informs us, that tells us why we are hurting. Every aspect of our pain. If you got a case of bad breath, if you got a problem of a hangnail, if you got a problem with your relatives in prison, all of it comes from colonialism. And once you understand that, and don't allow this other stuff to get involved, because people will manipulate your pain to turn you against your interest, to turn you against the revolution. I'll pull this out. I'll stop this pain if you will betray the revolution. Or you can act like you are making this struggle. You don't have to work. You don't have to get up in the morning to get to the task that's been set for us, you know, by the revolution. You don't get, what do they call it, minimum wages when you're working for the revolution, you know. I mean, all of this kind of stuff, they can use your pain to divert you from the revolution, the struggle against colonialism. That's what white power does. Yes. And that is white power that's talking to you every time somebody tries to take you off the point with that kind of silliness, yes. Right? That's why the African People's Socialist Party is so important. That's why there are forces who will do everything they can to destroy the African People's Socialist Party, because we know the origin of the pain, and damn it, we're going to attack it. We're going to destroy colonial capitalism regardless of what any other force tries to do, and they know it. They've done everything. They've tried to kill me. They have beat me. They've thrown me in prison. They've done it to other Africans around the world, but the African People's Socialist Party is still here because we are African internationalists. And part of who we are is defined by this history that we're talking about. So I don't care if you were born yesterday. I don't care if you were born 15 years ago. If you come into this party, you have access to this whole history. This is your strength, your power, your capacity. And the question, of course, all the time is whether or not you'll accept them. Because there's the issue of having enough political experience, having political maturity, because they usually kill the revolution before you have a chance to achieve maturity, political maturity, and experience. But the African People's Socialist Party has achieved it for us all. Yes. And so you don't have to have gone through this by yourself. Join the African People's Socialist Party. We have gone through it. This is what shapes who we are, Uhuru. And I know Aisha's just sitting there. So I know Comrade Aisha just sitting there waiting to say something, because Aisha Fields is just one of the fiercest, most militant comrades, most dedicated and committed comrades in the party, and has been for a very long time. And she's over there in Huntsville, Alabama. And I can think of a lot of places, there are probably some places where it's harder to organize than in Huntsville, Alabama, the headquarters of NASA, space industry and what have you. There's probably some places harder to organize, and I'm trying to think of one. But in any event, here's Comrade Aisha. Go ahead, Comrade Aisha. Please talk to us about the party and your relationship to it.
Uhuru Chairman.
Uhuru.
Uhuru Chairman, Uhuru comrades. I just really want to just appreciate this study, and I want to thank you so much for that great overview, Chairman, because I'm just so excited to be a part of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement because of the positive vision that we have for a future that we have the ability to build. That is what the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement offers humanity. You know, a vision, not only a vision for what the future can look like, free of bosses and workers and oppressed and oppressor, but it gives us the theory, it gives us the strategy, and it gives us the organizational vehicle through which that is possible. And for me, being a part of the African People's Socialist Party has been the greatest honor in my life. And I think that's important to say, because imperialism has taught African people that if only we work harder, if only we achieve whatever colonial degrees are out there, if only we will be more like white people, if only we will be less like Africans, if only we don't struggle, if only we just succumb to the conditions that have been imposed on us, that maybe we have a chance to live like white people. Maybe we have a chance, to live a decent life, the kind of life that all human beings deserve, but the majority are denied because the white world hoards all of the world's resources, holds the power over, life and death over the world's people. But that is changing. That is changing. And the African People's Socialist Party is absolutely leading the charge towards ending that relationship that the white world has with the rest of the world for almost 600 years now. And I think that this discussion is so important. And hearing from the comrades in Occupy Tanzania, hearing from the comrades Columbai in St. Louis Ferguson, and really understanding the different strategies that the party and organizations that the party has established to be able to win should give everybody confidence that this is the movement that has to be united with. This is the leadership that has to be, supported. This is the theory that has to be adopted by all African, people, by all colonized people, by all freedom-loving people. And, I've been in the African People's Socialist Party now for, I'm going into my 14th year. And I've been a member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party for maybe about 12 years or so. And I've been, serving in the National Central Committee in the capacity of the director of the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, which is an organization that the party established in 2007 with the goal of opening up a whole new front for African people to be able to participate in forwarding the African Revolution. And the genius, one of the things that I think is so genius about the party is that it has created so many different ways to allow people to participate in the revolutionary trajectory of the party, whether people are, in the party, or not. That there's a trajectory that the party is on, and that has created so many different avenues for people to participate in pushing that, forward. And APDEP is one of those strategies. And what APDEP has been charged with doing is really winning African people with skills that generally have been denied to the African liberation movement. Africans who have skills in education and in agriculture and, doctors and nurses, and Africans who typically are won to the opposite of the revolution. Typically Africans whose skills are turned over to white power for their own individual, benefit, at the expense of the struggle of masses of African people. And APDEP has really allowed African people to who either have petty bourgeois aspirations or who are, actually, African middle class forces who are patriots, though, who are African patriots, to be able to turn their back, on white power and to be able to contribute their skills towards the African Revolution, to be able to contribute to a process that will allow us to build, and has allowed us over the last 10 years to build concrete programs, community farms, community gardens, infant and maternal health programs, clean water programs, educational programs, mental health programs, all, economic development programs that allow us to address the immediate conditions that have been imposed on our people, but that allow us the opportunity to see that it's not going to be enough for us to build programs as a colonized people still, without access to Africa's resources, without self-government, but that we have the responsibility to do what we can now to use those skills to address our people's, needs, and to give our people the confidence that we can win, that we can do these things for ourselves, that we can be a self-reliant, self-determined, self-governing people, and to win people into that process, to deepen that understanding, to deepen that unity, to actually contend with the power that imperialism has right now, to help to develop and deepen our own dual and contending power as the African revolution, as the African organized African working class. And it's just been a tremendous honor, and just to look at the entire history of the party over this series that you've led, Chairman, has been brilliant. It's been very it's just been an excellent and very dynamic process. I'm so honored to be able to be a part of this particular discussion on the 2000s, and I'm just looking forward to everything that the party has moving forward. And I just really, really appreciate this discussion.
Uhuru, comrade. Well, I've just spoken of the boy Wonder earlier on in the introduction to this discussion. Comrade Jesse Neville, who was the party's candidate for mayor in this minority African city of St. Petersburg, Florida, with an African population only 23%, and who, on a ticket with Comrade Akile Anai, who I've recently learned is my granddaughter. I think we have these naming ceremonies all the time in the party. People are running away from their colonial identification, and so perhaps we should have a ceremony that we can create grandchildren and grandparents. But the fact of the matter is, culturally throughout our existence as African people, that's where Hillary, steals our stuff and talking about it takes a village to raise a child. And the reality is that every African child is our child. And that's why we refer to each other as Baba, as uncle and father and stuff like that, because we are one people. And of course, some of us abandon our people and our community, and they're no longer the people, so we wouldn't call them grandchildren or anything like that. We call them other things. But Jesse Neville ran for mayor, and he ran under the slogan, unity through reparations. That was a demand that he was making to white people. These were not even people who pretended to be revolutionary white people. These are ordinary white people who hang out on Central Avenue in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, which is a major sort of uppity white people area, and with sidewalk cafes and stuff like that, and just ordinary white people who also in some instances being displaced by this city that is ruthlessly engaged in transforming the city into a kind of Palm Beach for rich white people. But he ran demanding of white people unity through reparations. You can't play with this. Not unity through helping a poor African child, not unity with having a good Negro friend, not unity because you got some kind of sympathy for how bad black people are treated, but unity through reparations, through payback. It's an anti-colonial demand. And he and Comrade Kile led a demonstration of more than 200 white people, not so-called revolutionaries, not fair weather friends or anything like that. 200 ordinary white people marched down the city streets with an African population of only 23%, courageously marched down the street chanting unity through reparations and chanting the fact that, that they work under the leadership of the African working class. 200 white people did that. And I just wanted to say that in part of introduction, and also that Comrade Jesse is the chair of Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and under his leadership has built that organization to nearly 1,000 members, more than 35, 37, maybe 40 or more cities throughout the United States. And this is who we are. And I want to also introduce Jesse. Go ahead, Jesse. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I just want to say what an incredible honor it is to be on this study with you today, and salute you and your leadership and all of the amazing studies that you've done on Omali taught me, and salute the African People's Socialist Party. And just again, thank you for having me on. It's a great honor to be here. And I also wanted to salute the brilliance of the strategy of the party in creating the African People's Solidarity Committee, of which I'm a proud member, and extending the African Revolution into the white community, into the white oppressor nation population, and just the history of that you laid out in terms of the role that played in maintaining the survival of the revolution against the counterinsurgency. And I also wanted to say that I actually met the Uhuru movement when I was 19. In 2009, I met Chairwoman Penny Hess, the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and Aisha Fields, APDEP Director Aisha Fields, who's on the study today, at an event in Sarasota on the environment, on how colonialism is killing the environment. And then shortly after that, I came to see you, Chairman. You spoke at the library here in St. Petersburg, where I was a student. The library was acquiring your books into their special collections archive, so I came and I saw a presentation that you gave about the history of the party and everything that the party's done historically. But I was reflecting on what actually motivated me to join the cadre organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and I remembered that in 2011, so it was about a year or so after I met the Uhuru movement, I had attended an Impedum convention in Philadelphia, and we returned from Philadelphia to St. Petersburg on, I'm pretty sure it was February 21st, which if I'm not mistaken is the anniversary of the murder of Malcolm X, if I'm remembering the date correctly. And when we got back into St. Petersburg, there were cop cars everywhere, and it was a complete lockdown, military lockdown, especially of the south side. And I was like, what is going on? And it turned out that a white cop named David Crawford had been shot, allegedly by an 18-year-old or even younger, 16.
Yeah, just turned 15.
15.
And
yes.
week after, wasn't it a week? Yeah, just a week
16.
after his 16th birthday. Okay.
Right.
All right.
So a 16-year-old, just turned 16-year-old African, his name was Nicholas Lindsay, and it was a complete lockdown of the south side, and many people were still out of town, so some of us were asked to go in and take pictures for the burning spear. And so I saw with my own eyes the assault rifle toting SWAT team going through the south side of St. Petersburg, through the African community, banging down doors. I saw little African children standing outside of their houses looking up at these, armored vehicles going through the African community. They were hiding behind trees with their guns. They used the parking lot of the Tropicana Field baseball stadium as a military staging ground for this attack, for this occupation of the African community, and helicopters everywhere, and it was a siege on the south side. And they just put out this thing saying, we're looking for a suspect, he's a young black male. That was what they said. So that made every young African man in the city a suspect, and it was complete colonial terror carried out by the state against the African community. And then shortly after that, there was another incident where the police invaded the home of an African man named Hydra Lacey, and he ended up dying in that attack, and 4 cops died. And they put out this whole thing about what actually happened, but no one knows exactly what happened because the mayor at the time, who was Bill Foster, bulldozed his house after the shooting happened, after the 4 cops were killed, and he was killed. And then later on, when they released more information about it, it turned out that Hydra Lacey was actually handcuffed with his hands behind his back, and they were tasing him. So they were essentially torturing him. And somehow they claim that in the midst of that, he managed to, get hold of a gun and fight back, and that's what happened. So this was just an intense period of deep counterinsurgency. And then in the midst of all of that, then there was this white nationalist radio show host whose name was Clem something, but his radio name was Bubba the Love Sponge. And he had a radio station, a radio show here in St. Petersburg, and he went on the air, and they were talking about the Uhuru movement, they were talking about the chairman, and they actually openly called for the assassination of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. So this was counterinsurgency from all fronts happening, and I saw how the Uhuru movement, under your leadership, Chairman, fought back against that and pushed that back, and you called for a Freedom Summer project in the summer of 2011, and African people and white people in the Solidarity movement came in from all over the country and hit the ground and did outreach and knocked on doors and built community gardens in neighborhoods throughout the African community. And actually the party built a black community convention to bring Africans together to talk about economic development, to talk about the police containment policies, and to build a black agenda amongst the African working class. So it was those experiences, seeing the counterinsurgency with my own eyes and seeing the role of the Vanguard Party of the African working class and the role of white people as part of that strategy that won me to join the African People's Solidarity Committee.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
I thank you, and I want to say that that's just one side of it, because there were other white people in this city too, and I think it's important to say that, because especially the people who consider themselves left or liberals and what have you, who have their little enclaves and who have their little, they used to have, I don't know if they still have their little fairs where everybody comes out and do peace, love, and stuff like that. And but they didn't make a single move. This party was under attack. We were under assault. There was not a single liberal, not a single so-called constitutionalist, somebody who is all about civil liberties. Not a single protest, not one word came from them. But it was the solidarity movement that we had created. And I think it's important to mention that, because one of the things that makes the solidarity movement significant is that we were determined also in the African People's Socialist Party to end the isolation of the African Revolution. That we would provide some kind of leadership, even for white people who would be united with us, so that in every instance, when they killed Fred Hampton, when they killed Malcolm X, when they murdered African people in Congo or any other place, that there were white people there, and there was no meaningful movement by white people. So white governments, colonial governments, felt like they had the authority to be able to do that without having any consequences in the white community among the colonizer population. And generally speaking, that has been true. Left to their own devices, the white people will not function. There has to be leadership, and so that it doesn't deteriorate into some kind of white rights thing. I just want to say that I remember in the 1960s when in Berkeley, California, I remember this whole free speech movement that developed on the campus in Berkeley, California. But what few people remember is that this movement came about as a consequence of certain white groups on campuses supposedly supporting the struggle of black people in Mississippi and other places. So they were setting up on the campus, they had their core tables, Congress of Racial Equality, they had their SNCC tables, they had their civil rights tables, and the college administration told them they couldn't have some of these tables, and so they started a movement for free speech, the ability to do that. So one would assume that what the free speech movement would be about is the right to be in solidarity with Africans from these different fronts, but it wasn't. It turned out the right to be able to call somebody MF, or the right to be able to do this. I mean, a whole movement. I mean, they shut down Berkeley with this kind of stuff. Nobody who heard anything about the free speech movement knows that the basis of the movement was not because of an attack on white people in general, but it was an attack on white people who tried to stand in solidarity with the African movement from wherever they were. That's the thing that we were looking at. And so they abandoned that, and that's why it's absolutely necessary for the leadership to come from the African Revolution and the Advanced Detachment. So we don't want that kind of isolation anymore. And what should have been an attack on that isolation from those groups who set up those tables in Berkeley, at the University of California, Berkeley, that should have been a struggle against that isolation. It turned into a struggle for white rights instead, and not just white rights in general, but the right to be profane, the right to, to stand up in public and say cuss words and stuff like that. That's what it turned into. And our party has always moved to fight against the isolation of our movement. I mean, not just to fight against our isolation, but to function in solidarity with the oppressed peoples around the world. And that's why we united and do unite and still unite with the struggle of the Mexican people. All these crybabies, all these people crying about Trump's wall. That's, unite with the Mexicans. You're uniting with yourself when you talk about I'm opposed to the wall. That means you are for the democratic expulsion and exclusion of Mexicans and other people, as opposed to the return of this land. Half of Mexico stolen by white power, and what you're opposed to is Trump building a wall, which is so we work and struggle with and unite with the Mexicans, and we unite with the Nicaraguans, and not just in general concepts, but also with the Nicaraguan Revolution. We were on the front lines. We unite and did unite with the Iranians when they took, in 1979, they took that embassy that was used as a spy operation against the Iranian people that helped to keep the Shah in power, to the detriment not only of the Iranian people, but as an anchor for as a U.S. military outpost to try and control the entire Persian Gulf and the Middle East. And we united and worked with the Palestinians. And we have gone and tried to extend a relationship with Russia, even capitalist Russia, as a means to try to make sure that the African Revolution is not isolated, that we have friends around the world, even friends who are looking out for their own interests. We have no illusions about that. There are forces who will look out for their own interests, but as long as we know we're fighting against colonialism, we don't get caught up in whether they're white people. There were people who attacked us in 1979 when we united with the struggle of the Iranian people when they were not only being attacked in Iran, but in the streets of this country, of the United States, because they said the Iranians are white too. What the hell? We're struggling against colonialism. We're not involved in some kind of race nationalist revolution. We're in a struggle for national liberation. African people have to be free. So we've done those things, and the most critical thing that I want to say, this is part of summing up a little bit, and I hope we have a couple more minutes, is that the development of the African Socialist International. Now, this is not just some stuff that we did for people in Africa or some stuff like that. What has happened is that we are regrouping. The reason African people are separate today is not because Africans decided to separate ourselves. It's because a meeting by white power happened in Berlin, Germany, 1884 and 85, and white people sat around a table and carved up Africa with the intent to steal everything that we've got and to prevent themselves from having to go to war with each other in order to take Africa's resources. And so now Africans have been spread around the world and false consciences imposed upon us, but we are regrouping. We are pulling the whole African revolutionary movement back together. Marcus Garvey, a brilliant, most magnificent effort to make that happen, where something like 11 million Africans were associated with the Garvey movement to take back Africa as ours. Not you know, some phony Pan-Africanist kind of sentiment, but based on Africa for Africans. At home in Africa and abroad, meaning in Houston, Texas too. Meaning on West Florissant as well, in St. Louis. So this is the movement, and we now are engaged in rebuilding this movement, the movement that they thought they destroyed with the murder of Patrice Lumumba. The movement that they thought they had frustrated with their success in forcing a retreat for Che Guevara, who was in Africa for the purpose of doing what? Initiating a continental-wide guerrilla war against imperialism. That's why he was there, to unite Africa. And so what has happened, of course, is that we in the African People's Socialist Party are the response to the imperialists who overthrew Nkrumah, thinking that they were going to end it, who tried to frustrate the efforts of Nkrumah to unite all of Africa by creating this artificial entity that they call an Organization of African Unity that actually codified the division that happened in 1884 and 85 as a part of this charter. So this party is responsible for taking the African Revolution back to Africa, throughout the African world and what have you, and we are functioning on many different fronts, not only in Africa, but throughout the world where African people are located. So as part of a summation, and I just want to say that I know that Asa, is there anything more that you want to contribute to this discussion quickly? From South Africa?
Uhuru, comrade.
Uhuru.
I wanted to take that.
I'm sorry, we're not able to hear you. It's really bad. The interference is horrible. I don't know if it's the South African state or on this end or just colonialism in general. Try again. We may not be able to hear you. We may not be able to hear you.
All right, Chairman. No, I just wanted to say that, can you hear me right now?
Yes, it's much better.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that the issue that you are dealing, I appreciate it so much, the history of our party, because it's no trajectory that we're troubling, and it helped so much in showing the new world, because that I wanted to say was that in South Africa, you know, there is no history of the political, the fact that somebody really believes in what they're saying. There's no fury, you know, in the struggle that we've been waging all this time, the history of how the politics that, you know, neglecting people that work, the fact that political results up to that, you know, I think it really helps. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the spirit of nationalism, because what other comrades, you know, from Usizda Kalambai, as well as other comrades like comrades, they've been mentioning is the fact that theory is what actually, you know, make a conscious decision that they can stand on. And I always say that, you know, the weakness of South Africa is what South Africa thinks is its strength, which is like money and opportunism. But I'm saying that if you're paying people to protect you and protect your country, which is, you know, a criminal country, then once somebody is actually not paid enough to die, then you can't really you can't depend on those people. Whereas we here, as African internationalists, as poor as we are, you know, the African working class, black people in the ghettos, but the fact that we have understanding of how this movie is going to end, nothing threatens us. No money can bribe us. Nothing can stop us. So, uhuru.
Uhuru. I want to say, just from Asa's presentation, you know, those comrades in occupied Tanzania, South Africa, many of them have never been to a restaurant until we were there. And we've had meetings in South Africa where there was no electricity. These comrades in South Africa have never asked for a single penny. They have never, but we're going to get them some resources, and everybody who's in this meeting should know that we're going to be contributing some resources there, because those comrades are really on the front lines, and they're fighting in a most courageous struggle for all the time they've been there. Unlike any other force that we worked with on the continent of Africa who want to see us as some kind of NGO or ATM machine, these comrades who do the work on a regular basis, most dedicated, most committed African internationalists you ever want to see, never said, where's the money, how are we going to get some money, or something to that effect. We're going to make that happen, and I'm just telling everybody here. And also, before we get out of here, I want to say that Black Power 96, our radio station, needs $5,000. And we got to get that money right away, because there's stuff that we got to get done for that radio station, incredible radio station, and Comrade Timber has elevated that station to such a high standard. Since Timber took over that radio station, it has become what it is that we need for this radio station to be. But there's some stuff that we need to do that will support these incredible programmers, because the programs on the radio station are part of the Uhuru movement. This is unlike anything that's existed prior to Timber assuming leadership. We need $5,000. We need $5,000 for Black Power 96 FM radio station, and we need it now, because there's stuff that has to happen in terms of advancing our capacity there. We need our programmers, when people turn to that radio station, they need to be able to see on their instruments that they're using, they need to be able to see the show they're looking at, they need to see the name of the program, and they need to be able to see the name of the music and that kind of stuff. That elevates the morale of our programs, and it takes us up to a higher level with that radio. And there's equipment we need, microphones and stuff like that. We need it now. And so and we need $5,000 for the radio station, for Black Power 96, $5,000. Send your money to Black Power 96. And so I just wanted to make that announcement quickly. And then I want you to anticipate that money is going to be going to South Africa. That we have comrades there. We have comrades in Kenya. We need to get resources there, and this is going to be the major foundation. And one thing that makes us significant in this country is that I can go to South Africa and I can go to West Africa and Sierra Leone and Ghana and places like that and I can go all over the continent of Africa, and I can say to Africans there, in terms of understanding that we are one Africa, one African people. I have been to the United States. I have come back to make a report about all of the resources that's been stolen from Africa. I have seen what it has happened. I know what we are capable of because I have seen the consequences. I've seen what has happened with the coltan and the cobalt that's come from Congo. I've seen the computers that they transformed, that they made it with, and I've seen the fact that it's possible to have clean water because we provided clean water for them in New York, and we provided clean water for them in Houston, Texas, and other places. I've seen this with my very eyes. And because I've seen it, and because I know that it came from Africa, I know what is possible for us to do if we take back what they've taken, and if we create our own capacity to work for us and not for imperialism. This is possible for us as well. That's one of the things that makes us significant and makes it necessary for me to be able to reunite with the African Revolution, because that's my task. In many ways, the imperialists has helped us to be able to destroy imperialism because they spread us all over the world. And we are Africans everywhere, in Brazil, throughout the Americas. We are Africans here in the United States. We are Africans in Berlin. We are Africans all over Europe, and we are clearly Africans in Africa itself. And united, we have the ability to overturn this whole rotten social system that requires our suffering and exploitation as a condition for its success. Uhuru. Yes, come on. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. And we'll just put your hands together again. I want to see everyone who's tuning in via Facebook and YouTube, and also appreciate all of your engagement. We see a lot of questions coming in, and I'm now going to bring up Comrade David, who is the Director of Media Relations for the Office of the Chair, who is going to be corresponding with us the questions that were coming in from the live streams. Over to David.
Definitely want to salute the panel and Chairman for the discussion. We have a salute from Solidarity Force Virginia Wilson. She says, salute veteran comrades of the Blue Solidarity Movement and APSC. We also have a salute from Kobina, who is the Southern Regional Leadership for APSP. He says, we are African internationalists and we trace all of our pain back to colonialism. Sarah B. Tonin, aka Makeda, in St. Louis says, I just want to state my unity with APSP and the theory of African internationalism. I appreciate the chairman for being the Vanguard leader that he is and for helping to breathe political life into me. I appreciate the history and the presence of the party and all its components. Kongo Yasika Bumuku from London says, once we have achieved scientific explanation of our worldview also changes. We then become able to see ourselves as masters of our own destiny. Kongo Yasika also says, when I observe the situation in Congo, we need African internationalism. Malika Alexander.
That comrade, by the way, is from Congo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Malika Alexander says, right on, Chairman, it's a great honor to be in the party. It is home. As we study, I find my voice. I am a church girl, but imagine I wear my full uniform to church. It was amazing how many raised their fists and asked me to tell them about it. She's a member of ANWO, so that is the, the Red Beret. Robert Denise Wynn, who is here in St. Pete, says Black Power 96 is live. Big up, y'all.
May I just also say there's a comment from Jay Jacksonville, and it says, you sure love non-blacks to be claiming to be moving for black people. What I love is people who work to destroy colonial capitalism. You say non-blacks, I love the Mexicans who do that. I love the Iranians who do that. I love the Palestinians who do that. I love the Nicaraguans who do that. I love the Venezuelans who do that. I love the white people who do that. I love everybody who's struggling against colonial capitalism. And I have problems with people who can't make that struggle and don't have enough capacity to see that to be against colonialism is the fundamental question for the liberation of black people. It's not a love affair in that fashion. What we love is a strategy. What we love is an anti-colonial strategy that would end our oppression, and et cetera. So I just want to be able to say that. Is there something else, comrades?
Not from online.
Okay.
Not from online.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to engage any of our panelists today? We also have Columbai on the phone, Aisha on the phone,
Exactly.
Comrade Asa, and also Comrade Jesse right here. So any question can be directed at any of our participants.
And any of the participants can also,
intervene and try and answer. So,
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Chairman, I just,
Who is
again,
that?
this is Columbai.
Okay.
This is Columbai, Antoinette, and I just really appreciate every Omali taught me. I remember when, these studies, came about, and I have really developed politically through these, morning studies. So I just really want to salute my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, tremendously. And I really wanted to say that, I really want to salute and really appreciate Deputy Chair Ona Zanae Yeshitela for her tremendous leadership as a African nationalist, as a woman, a woman in our movement that is a leader. Just really appreciate her coming into St. Louis with Chairman's political report, and I actually got to walk beside her and see her, struggle and fight for the Uhuru House with all these contractors, and even with myself, with everyone here, to understand what it meant to be a revolutionary in the practical work, because, you know, a lot of times people sit behind screens and, you know, they participate in, you know, this study and they like to talk. But, you know, the actual, you know, work that you do, you know, speaks volume. And, you know, a lot of stuff was trending, you know, revolution was trending, you know, but, you know, the party put practical work down on the grounds in St. Louis, Missouri, in the African working class community. And I just really appreciate her leadership, and being here, it just helped and shaped and mold the leader I am today in how I conduct meetings, my demands from the forces under my leadership, what I demand for myself as well. So I just wanted to be able to say that, and to say that the petty bourgeoisie, you know, is a disgusting. It's so disgusting, and they would use the class every opportunity they can to work against our own interests, as Chairman has adequately said. And I appreciate the political education being able to teach me how not to be an opportunist in my own, you know, subjective bullshit that goes on that we experience every day, but to teach me how to see the long-term goal, you know, and not sell out for a short-term interest. And it was political education that helped me be able to identify that and see that, and you know, always choose the side of the people and my liberation as the ultimately goal. And so, you know, this you know, anybody can be you know, a member of the African People's Socialist Party and make this struggle. You know, Africans you know, moving beyond our pain, but, you know, really uniting principally and saying that African people gotta be free. Like, we gotta be free. And the working class gotta lead it. Because the petty bourgeoisie is moving everywhere we are. Like in St. Louis, everywhere I travel, and, you know, in Portland, in Seattle, everywhere we are, we see the petty bourgeoisie selling out the class every opportunity. And it's one place where the class is pulled to its greatest statue, and that's the African People's Socialist Party. So I just really appreciate the African People's Socialist Party and our great leadership, you know, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, truly, not just from words, but actually what I see with my eyes and witness, you know, with being in this party. Uhuru.
Let me just say, I want to appreciate, first of all, Comrade Kalambayi mentioning Deputy Chair Honor Zene Yeshitela. And that's important because most people in the party movement know that Comrade Deputy Chair Honor Zene Yeshitela is my wife. And this has also been like a point of attack against the party, but it's based on the assumption of negating the concept of women's leadership. Mm-hmm. It is a horrible attack on women and women's leadership because there's somehow an assumption that Comrade Honor Zene Yeshitela has a place and role in this party, where it is based on the fact that she has a relationship with me. But the fact is that everybody knows, anybody who's ever worked with her, and who would make that claim, who was with Honor Zene Yeshitela when we were renovating that building on 4101 West Florissant, where there were no toilets, no heat in the St. Louis winter, no air conditioning, who, in the absence of having toilets, had to piss in cans and bottles, working on the worst kinds of conditions. That's genuine leadership. There are no people who ever made that attack on honor. It's an attack on women. They're based on the assumption that no woman could actually be a leader unless there's some kind of illicit relationship that with some man who supposedly has power, one thing. And the other thing is that I see here there's a J. Jacksonville that says someone put out a video of receipts of where the money and donations are going, as well as who owns the businesses in the Uhuru stores, etc. They all seem to be topped of by the euro. They showed the receipts. Well, first of all, I just want to say this was not supposed to be a question. This is an attack. Yeah. There is no way. How do I say nobody could show you such receipts? The fact is, I don't have to show you a receipt. All you got to do is go to 4101 West Florissant. There it is. Ask the African community that's being rehabilitated as a consequence of our presence. There it is. Come to 1245 St. Petersburg, Florida, on Tyrone Lewis Avenue. There it is. These are institutions that's been created for the people and under the leadership of the revolution, and every institution is owned by the party. So this wasn't supposed to be a question, because the thing is that somebody can make a slanderous attack, and you can say that's not true, and that what you've just said. To put that on the table is just to get it on the agenda. It's not just to get it on the table. It's not to have a discussion, because even if it were true, I would deny it. So there's obviously no question of my being able to prove the lie. I can't prove the lie, but what I can prove is there's a physical building, physical institutions that have been created, and African people are the ones who created it. African people are the ones who, and they've done it with solidarity by white people. And so that's what the attack is about. And so I think it's really important to be able to say that. Secondly, our Central Committee, the whole leadership of the African People's Socialist Party is united. And it didn't just come united in some dark room or what have you. We just came out of a Congress attended by hundreds of people who elected the leadership, who adopted the program, who heard the reports of all of our institutions and what have you, and united with them. So that's who we are. And so some troll, some internet troll who, I don't know, is under the influence of somebody who wants to destroy the movement or the revolution, it won't work. We've been here for 50 years almost now. We're going to take it into the future. We will win. And some race nationalism is not going to do that. Some assumption that you can attack the revolution, one, through, based on some prejudice against African women, it's not going to work. Some assumption that you can attack the revolution based on race nationalist politics, it's not going to work. It didn't work when people attacked the party because of our relationship with homosexuals, because we said that homosexuals, people who are part of this African nation, they are part of a nation. If they want to fight against imperialism and colonialism, they are welcome to this party. Get in the front lines if you want to do that. We lost an entire party organization in France because of our stance on this question. So we lost a party organization in Long Island because we came out against Obama, the traitor to black people. Where were you when that happened? You know, he's a non-Euro. Where were you when the party made that assault? When the party identified Nelson Mandela as a traitor to black people who betrayed the revolution in South Africa, where were you? If you were alive, I'm willing to bet that you were among those non-Euros who were fighting against the party because they're black people too. We're making a revolution, buddy. Yep. That's our objective. You had some, yeah. Uhudu.
Chairman or grandfather.
Uhudu, who is this?
Oh, this is Asa.
Yes, Asa. Go ahead.
Comrade Chairman, thank
yes.
you so much for this entire discussion. It was wonderful, and I wanted to say that we're learning new ways. Actually, every time we engage with nationalism, we learn new ways to live and how to see our.
We're having a problem hearing you. Perhaps if you, I don't know if it. There's a lot of interference, but get closer to your device, and because it has improved on one occasion.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Uhuru?
Yes. Go ahead.
Is it?
Go ahead.
No, he's saying.
We're not going to be able to do it, Asa. I'm sorry. We just breaking up too badly.
Yes, sir.
That's why we have to win this damn revolution. Yeah. Come on. Uhuru, keep pushing it, comrade. Go ahead, Akile.
Well, I want to just unite with everything that's been put forth by this entire panel and say that every Omali taught me it has been just extremely significant in all of our political development. Just hearing the history of the party throughout this decade, it really reminded me that this has been a period, I think, since 2010 or a little bit before then, up to now, has been really serious political development for me. I joined the party in 2015 after I graduated high school, but before that was being influenced by the party in so many different ways. Like in 2011, with the Freedom Summer Project, I was, with comrade Dr. Yeshitela, who was in St. Pete, and I was with her. We went on that camping trip, and then APSP did the garden in our backyard. And one of our homes that we lived with me and my family, they did the garden in our backyard. I remember one of the first books of the party that I read and did a project on was Overturning the Culture of Violence. And that was like in, I believe, elementary school that I didn't obviously understand a lot of what I was reading, but my dad had introduced this movement to me at a very young age. And I remember that book was like, it really hit. And then when I met Chairwoman Penny Hess in person for the first time at the Uhuru House and recognizing her as the author of that book, I remember the party used to do these events called Black Sundays, and there were these tremendous rallies outdoors, like these concerts that happened. And that was when I wrote my first political poem called Red, Black, and Green that I performed. And that was just like the start of my, getting introduced to political life, not even really realizing it, but it was happening. I remember when the thing with Nick Lindsay happened, and I was in this city theater play, and I handmade my own shirt, Free Nick Lindsay, and I wore it to one of our rehearsals, and I was attacked by the director of the play at the time and the main star or whatever, and they wanted to kick me out of the play because I was wearing that shirt. So it was just all these things that were happening. And now I guess I'm a proud member of the African People's Socialist Party as a result of the work the party has been doing for these decades. So I just really want to appreciate your leadership, Chairman, and the work of the African People's Socialist Party. And I want to see Penny is here, so I'm going to turn
hold on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Akile. Uhuru Chairman, I want to salute you and this study. I think it's been, 6 or 7 weeks of going over the history of the party, and yet there's still so much more to tell. And I want to salute your leadership, the fact that the party is the vanguard, that you have never stopped struggling your whole adult life, that you are determined that African people will be free, liberated, and that all of Africa's stolen resources will be returned to it under the leadership of the African working class. It is an honor to be organized under the leadership of the party in the African People's Solidarity Committee. I want to salute Deputy Chair Yeshitela, all the members of the National Central Committee who are on this call today, and the forces from Azania and Comrade Jesse Neville of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I really appreciate and unite with the way that you're deepening this question about the significance of the African People's Solidarity Committee as a means of extending the African Revolution directly into the belly of the beast, into the white population, and especially its role in defeating the counterinsurgency and opening up or ending the isolation imposed on the African liberation movement by the counterinsurgency and the defeat of the African Revolution in the 1960s. And, just so many questions. The question that African people are colonized all over the world, the question of parasitic capitalism, and that white people sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people, that we are the colonizer nation. And in this period, as the party is building the African Socialist International, APSP and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement are being called on to go beyond just the United States into Europe and into Azania, occupied Azania, where white people still control the majority of the resources and land of African people. And I would just really, I wanted to ask you, Chairman, if you could talk a little bit more about the significance of APSP going into, especially Azania, also Europe, and other places around the world, as further extension into the colonizing nation.
Yeah, I think that's true, and then into Australia. And I want to mention, you got all these white people living stole all this land, murdered, I mean, for sport, so many black people there, living house to hog, and most of whom don't have the ability to unite with the genuine revolutionary effort to overturn imperialism and capitalism, and would prefer, again, to have personal relationships with Africans, whether in Australia itself or whether here, as opposed to uniting with an effort to overturn it. And I think it's going to be extremely important, because white people can get away in South Africa, what they call South Africa, with being able to call themselves South Africans. They're Africans now after the revolution, but it's easy to do that. They don't have to unite with the African Revolution. They don't have to unite with the struggle for black power. They don't have to turn the resources of African people back over to Africans or anything like that. We have to have a movement that forces anybody who claims to be for African people, who claims to be an African, that they have to commit national suicide. You can't be white and you can't live off the resources of black people, Africans. I don't care if you got them a long time ago. I don't care if it was your grandmama who was the recipient of them. It's ours. And so we have to have a movement that turns that back over to Africa. And that has to be something that's initiated inside Occupy Tanzania as well. So yeah, we will build a solidarity movement in South Africa with the intent of taking back our resources. And if they, and wherever it can be won, we will win that. And it's not going to be some struggle to get the white people to love black people in South Africa. Frankly, I don't think most Africans give a damn about seeking love from white people. I think Africans want to be able to have possession of our resources, the dignity of ourselves as a nation, to be able to consolidate our nation, and we want everything that belongs to us, and that's in South Africa as well. And we have to extend the African Revolution. What that means is that we're building the party in South Africa. I mean, unfortunately, we could not hear Asa as well as we should have been able to hear, but we're building the party there. And building the party has to also, we have to have the ability to extend the African Revolution smack dab in the middle of the colonizer population, the colonial population, the colonizer. They need to have to fight us behind enemy lines. Just like Africans in South Africa, we have to fight white power in our own communities. Well, we have to create a situation where white people, the colonizer, needs to have to be able to fight black power in white face in their own communities. That's part of what it means. We have to do that. And that's the thing that our party has given the African Revolution, the ability to do that finally. So we're just not out here by ourselves trying to penetrate. We can be in there forcing them to have to try to defend themselves from the African Revolution, as opposed to us constantly always being on the defensive. Uhuru. So I think that we may have sort of exhausted our time, right? Go ahead, Uhuru.
All right, so Uhuru, thank you once again, Chairman, and all of our panelists today for this dynamic discussion. And because of time, we want everyone to know that if your question wasn't answered, one of our moderators will correspond with you and make sure that the Chairman sees your question. This study was brought to you by the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, winning the war of ideas. For your worldwide revolutionary news and analysis, visit theburningspear.com. Revolutionary radio, dynamic shows, and music by Africans all around the world, tune into Black Power 96.3 FM, broadcasting out of St. Petersburg, Florida, and accessible via the Black Power 96 app for Apple and Android, or online at blackpower96.org. Did you unite with what you heard today and want to learn more about how you can get involved with the African People's Socialist Party? Visit APSP.org for all information regarding how you can apply. Join the Freedom Mass Choir and Band. The Freedom Mass Choir and Band is an all-African community group of singers and instrumentalists that sing songs of resistance and revolution. Members are located throughout the United States and attend weekly rehearsals both in person and via live stream and video. Sign up by emailing blackpowerchoir@gmail.com or call 727-537-6736. Also, a really exciting announcement. Chairman Omali Yeshitela will be in London January 24th at the Oxford Union debate on the Africa debate. Chairman Omali Yeshitela has been recognized as an expert on Africa and accepted the invitation to partake in this historic debate, bringing African internationalism to the world stage. He will be debating on the same platform that Malcolm X did 55 years ago. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
On January 26th in London, join the party for the Africa and Africans Must Unite speakers event featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela beginning at 2 p.m. Presentations from Secretary General Louise Kinshasa, Deputy Chairwoman Yeshitela, Bertin, Chair of APSP France, Tafar Mugari, Chair of APSP South Africa via video, and APSC Chairwoman Petty Hess will electrify and sum up the many faces of the crisis of imperialism and call on Africans to unite on our own Black agenda, no matter where it is we have been dispersed. For more information, contact uhuruasi@aol.com. On March 23rd and 24th, join the African National Women's Organization for their national plenary being held in St. Louis, Missouri. African women's role in the revolution is on the front lines, and ANWO helps us to understand this by showing its tremendous leadership of African women, heading important campaigns like Arrest CPS, the state apparatus that steals Black children away from their mothers and places them in the hands of a system to either be abused or kidnapped by white people. All African women should be a part of ANWO, and this plenary will make it clear why. Visit anwoohuru.org to learn more about this event. April 6th and 7th, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will be conducting its 3rd electoral campaign school in St. Petersburg, Florida. Do you want to learn how to run for office on a revolutionary platform such as the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination and win? You don't want to miss this school. With speakers from the BIB Steering Committee, including Chairman Omali Yeshitela himself, you can learn from the best. Visit blackisbackcoalition.org for more info on the electoral campaign school. The movement for white solidarity with Black power is growing. Witness it at the Uhuru Solidarity National Convention April 13th and 14th in St. Louis, Missouri. Come see the growth of white reparations to African people and learn the role that white people play in creating a future free of oppression. Visit uhurusolidarity.org to learn more about this convention. Pre-order your copy of Chairman Omali Yeshitela's latest book, Vanguard, The Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution, at burningspearmarketplace.com. Pre-order now before the end of February and get exclusive features such as a color photo spread and an autograph from the chairman. This book is the political report to the 7th Congress and features a foreword from ASI Secretary General Louise Kinshasa, as well as international solidarity statements from anti-colonial, anti-imperialist organizations existing around the world. Pre-order your copy now. If you are local to St. Peter, St. Louis, join us at the Uhuru House 3 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. The International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement will be hosting our Black Power Sunday rally, raising important concerns and community issues and organizing to overturn them. And right here in St. Pete, we are getting ready to have our Freedom Night Celebration 727 for the MLK Day celebration happening on Tyrone Lewis Avenue South tomorrow. That is January 21st. Starting at 3 p.m., we'll be having a concert at the Tyrone Lewis Community Gym on MLK Street. And we want you to come out tonight so you can learn how you can be a part of helping organize this event, being out there to help us staff and everything of that nature. So please come on out 3 p.m. if you're local, St. Pete, 4 p.m. if you are in St. Louis. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of Omali Taught Me Sunday Study, and catch us back in an hour at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we'll be launched from our newly launched YouTube page, Uhuru Congo. We'll be live with Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the ASI Secretary General Louise Kinshasa on the situation in Congo happening right now. We're going to go live from Uhuru Congo again at 11 a.m. Eastern today, so just catch us back in an hour. Thank you all.
Uhuru, let me make an announcement. Yes. We got a $100 contribution from Kabula in Chicago for Black Power 96.3. So we need $4,900. So we need that money for Black Power Blueprint. Thank you, Comrade Kabula. We're going to continue to make this the best radio station in the world. So everybody else, we need the $5,000. Send your money to Black Power 96. Uhuru.
BlackPower96.org/donate.
Yeah. Uhuru.
Thank you all, comrades, brothers and sisters. Uhuru.
Uhuru.